Welcome to A Slice of Queensland History, looking at the history of the asylums for the mentally ill and those who could no longer work. It was a story of abuse and neglect, and it focused on four main places: the Ipswich Hospital, the Woogaroo Asylum, Brisbane, and the Benevolent Asylum on Stradbroke Island. Brisbane was still very much growing from its convict heritage, and likewise medicine was struggling to cope with ideas of mental illness. The jail in Brisbane was where people were kept if they were defined as being insane, but often doctors couldn't tell the difference between drunkenness and madness. Ideas were developing in Europe, but very few of those were making the sea journey to the colonies, and the doctors in Brisbane and Queensland generally had no training in treating the mentally ill. Dr. Kanan arrived in 1842, and at that time he was one of two GPs, and he was in charge of the mentally ill people in the jail. The hospital was still the convict hospital, and the people in the front line of deciding whether a person was mad or drunk were the police. If someone was defined as being insane, they were sent to the Tarban Creek Asylum in Sydney, because Queensland didn't exist as a separate colony in the 1840s. Dr. Hobbs arrived in 1849, and so did Dr. Henry Challoner, increasing the competition for medical jobs. And it wasn't long before the doctors started abusing each other in print. The Brisbane Hospital was one of the places where conflict arose the most, because there weren't many jobs, and sectarianism also became a problem. The doctors were all involved in other issues which took time away from their medicine. One of Dr. Hobbs' issues was fighting the council who dug the large cutting in front of his house. Kevin O'Doherty was the last of the four to arrive in 1863, and like the others, he was very soon involved in other things. The Queensland government got a message from London to build an asylum. They hurriedly had plans drawn up, and the first part of it was finished by 1865, and Dr. Cannon was appointed to be the surgeon in charge. The weekly reports from the asylum were what the government was mostly interested in, not the experience of the patients. Each doctor was paid a guinea for every certificate of insanity that they signed. Meanwhile, for the people who could no longer work, the Dunwich Asylum on Stradbroke was set up. And again, the welfare of the patients took a back seat. The Minjerribah Museum on Stradbroke has a recreation of patient accommodation. Unlike the Woogaroo Asylum, people could apply to go there, but it was a long way from anyone in Brisbane or Ipswich. The Ipswich Hospital Committee tried to get an asylum built near their own hospital, but the government said no. As problems started to come to light in the asylums, people who visited the asylums wrote letters to the paper pointing out the appalling conditions. The government ignored them. The Ipswich doctors also took to the press and accused each other of various things. It was possible to get a release from the asylum, and some things improved, such as lowering the fences. The police, though, were still in the front line, and the new buildings were built at the asylums, but that didn't keep pace with the number of enrolments. Or I should say, assignments. Some developments in medical science were making progress, but generally by 1878, Journalists were reporting that the system was flawed at its core. A reception house was set up in the police barracks to improve the assessment of mentally ill people. Here we see a lockup at the Woogaroo Asylum for people who were considered to be recalcitrant. The asylums entered popular culture, and some people were claiming there was an epidemic of lunacy in the colonies. But a lot of the lunacy took place in this place, the Parliament. The legacy of Woogaroo continues in the surviving buildings, and many of the issues are still being debated. The image of the mentally ill has improved to some extent, but it is still very much a hot topic. Thanks for listening and watching. The book is available in the shops listed on the screen now.